always telling your stories, and it's time someone tells ours. We're humans first, journalists second. We chose this career to give you a voice. Now we're voicing ours. It's true, journalism has much room for improvement, but not all hope is lost, and we want your trust back by humanizing one journalist at a time. We're sharing with you what we go through to bring you the news. The pain, the tears, the trauma, and the mental health struggles. It's painful, and sometimes we even work 2 jobs to make ends meet. But we all have something in common. The passion, the joy, and the love we feel for storytelling and holding the powerful accountable. That includes holding ourselves accountable. So here are stories from us. This is how we want to help improve the news industry. The Awakened Journalist is proud to present Media Healers. I am Ileana Molina Fajardo. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Awakened Journalist and our special project Media Healers. Today I have the honor of having with us Lori Montenegro. She's currently the bureau chief at Telemundo Network Group in Washington D.C, where she oversees a team of correspondents. Before stepping up to this role, she was a national correspondent herself in the nation's capital for more than 20 years, covering the White House, Capitol Hill, and more. Her stories have aired nationally and internationally on topics such as politics, immigration, healthcare, the economy, and she's highlighted the most important roles Latinos have played nationwide, as well as Latino communities and the issues that they face on a daily basis and how we can improve upon those. She is a multiple times Emmy Award winner and has been recognized for her work by multiple organizations, including the Radio, Television, and Digital News Foundation, among many others. We aren't going into detail into how many awards she's won because Lori refused to tell me how many awards she's received, which speaks volumes of her character and how humble this human being is. And I'm so pleased and honored to have her here because I do agree titles and awards are not nearly enough of a representation of what the impact journalists have in communities in the world. So, and this woman right here is living proof of that impact. So Lori, thank you for being here with me.
Emiliana, I'm so happy to see you, even though it's virtual, and I just send you this huge, big hug. We miss you in DC. I wish we could do this in person, but thank you. I am the one that's honored to have you reach out and ask me if I would mind, being on The Awakening and with The Awakening Journalist. And so I said, of course, yes, there was nothing to really think about. So thank you for having me.
Okay, Lori, so before we even started this interview, I already shed some tears, I have to say.
I'm telling secrets.
Yeah, we were supposed to do this interview 40 minutes ago, and we've been just talking and catching up for the past 40 minutes. I teared up a little bit, so I can't wait to see what unfolds with this interview. It's going to be beautiful and magical, and we're going to start with why you chose this career.
Well, the career really chose me.
Oh, I love that. Okay.
I was a teenager who really had no idea what I was going to do. I never thought about going to college, and I will backtrack. My parents lived in Miami, Florida. We didn't have money. And so that never, went through my mind to go to college. My mother came home one day, and I don't know how she figured this out. But she says, Lori, I mean, they used to call me, they don't call me Lori, they call me Lori. And so she said, Lori, here are these papers that I got for you, and you got to apply for a Pell Grant. Well, she meant the Pell Grant. And I was like, okay. To this day, I don't know how she figured that out. But, they had migrated from Cuba. They were, well adults. I mean, as a matter of fact, my mom, when she came to this country, was not even pregnant with me. She got pregnant 5 years later after she migrated to the United States. So I went down to Miami-Dade Community College and got there and had to choose a career. And so I went eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
I love it.
And it landed on broadcast journalism. and the other career was criminology.
Wow.
And so my first semester at Miami-Dade Community College, there was a professor called Mr. Kearns, who sent a group of us, it was about 3 or 4 of us, and he sent us to a radio station in Miami Beach. At that time, it was WNWS. The station no longer exists. But they were looking, he said, for a broadcaster, somebody that at the top of the hour would give the news, the weather, and so forth. He says, none of you are going to get the job, but I'm going to send you there so that you can kind of get this idea of, you know, what this is about, what to expect. It's good to have formal interview experiences so you know how to behave. He was very hands-on. He was very hands-on. And one of the things I regret in life is not really ever getting to see him again, because he left Florida, and to say thank you, because I did go on that interview, and 6 months later, out of the blue, a gentleman called George Addison calls me on the phone. He was the news director. And I picked up the phone. Now, mind you, I was 19 years old. I'd forgotten about this interview, and he offered me the job. And I said, get out of here. Are you serious? And he said, yes, when can you start? So innocent old me goes down there without a clue, Emiliana, of what I was doing. Okay. And that's how this career actually began. And so after that, I went to another all news station. At that time was WNWS. And then after that, I went to WQBA radio, because my mom said she couldn't understand what I was saying in English. Pero bueno, mijita, I try, she says. And so, you know what? That actually made me feel so sad that I went looking for a job in radio in Spanish, and I got it. No sabía hablar español bien. Oh my gosh, dije tanto disparates. I said so many things that were just wrong, okay? But my parents were happy because they could understand what I was saying. And that is how actually I got into Hispanic broadcasting. And then from there got called to Channel 51 in Miami, which is the big Telemundo affiliate in South Florida. And that's how I began my television career. Is that exciting or what?
That is so exciting, and that is so beautiful that you took that route of into the unknown, embracing fears, because speaking a language that you aren't fully like comfortable with speaking, just to honor your parents so that they can understand you. Lori, that's beautiful.
No, and not only that, I worked at WQBA radio. I actually worked in a newsroom where I was the only woman, surrounded by all these older Cuban men. You know, and these were true radio people. These are people that came out of broadcast school. You know, you had to go, they were old school. You had to go to school to learn how to, you know, enunciate and how to, you know, pronounce. And some of them actually were not only journalism, they did the radio novelas. So I was intimidated. And, you know, they also were very, they used a lot of foul language. Oh my gosh, and I've never heard that in my life. And then, you know, they used to send me across the street to Ayestaran to get the coffee, until one day the GM saw me going downstairs, and he said, where are you going? And I says, oh, I'm going across the street for the coffee run. And he says, you know, you go ahead and do that today, but this is the last time I'm going to see you going to do the coffee run. Tell them old men to get up themselves and go do the coffee run. I didn't hire you to go and get coffee. And so that was one of the first lessons that I ever got, about learning to have people respect you, and have people not take advantage of you, and understand that you are a journalist and that you're there to do a certain job. I'm not saying that we don't pay our dues, because of course we all pay our dues. But he gave me a very important lesson. It was just like, you know, you can't let them just bully you, because if you allow that anywhere else you go, you're gonna, you know, you're gonna let them do that, and you're gonna think it's all right. And the fact of the matter is, he said, it's not right. It's not right. Everybody, you know, todos toman café. They all drink coffee. They can all take turns and go get the coffee. Let them serve you every once in a while.
Exactly. So. Wow, amen. I love that. What a beautiful lesson. Lori, so then almost more than 2 decades in the news industry, what has changed from when you started to now?
Obviously, the first and foremost thing, you know, technology has changed, and the way we tell stories, the way we can tell the story, that's just foremost. We have so many more tools now than we had before. But also, I would say on the downside, there is a lot more work. And when I say a lot more work, is there is a lot more pressure put on the journalist to produce more, and not always given the time to do it sometimes correctly. And before you know it, journalism, I always, and I quickly learned, and this, is not a 9 to 5 job.
Yeah.
We wake up, and we go to sleep, checking now our phones,
Yeah.
looking for information because we're curious. Every journalist is curious. And so, when we read, we just devour. We just don't know when to stop. And so, but that's what I would tell you is probably the leading thing in changing, is that there's a lot of pressure now put on journalists to produce more, sometimes not enough time to produce with quality, and a lot more is expected than I would say, 2 decades ago.
Yeah.
Because now I think, we're trying to cram a lot more news into our 16-minute broadcast. I think broadcasts probably were a little longer before. Now you have so much more commercials. And so even the newspapers, you see how they have shrunk. And so you're trying to just put, get so much in there. And where maybe a print reporter used to write one story, right now they're maybe being asked to write 2 and 3 stories. And then, you have broadcast reporters, and they are, they're maybe working on one story, but then there's doing live shots. There are more news shows within those stations. So, before it used to be 6 to 6:30, now we have 5:30. In some markets, it's even 4 o'clock. So yes, it's a lot more. It's a lot more than what we were doing definitely 2 decades ago, even 10 years ago, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. And definitely a lot of the quality of the work sometimes takes a toll. And not just that, but it takes a toll on the journalists as well.
Yes, it
Have
does.
you seen that, especially you managing a team of correspondents in DC?
Well, I can tell you that it's really sad to see a lot of colleagues have left the business. A lot of colleagues have talked to me about leaving the business. They're burnt out. They're burnt out. And, some people, I had a young lady, I'm not going to say names, but she was an intern here. You know her. She was an intern in this office over 15 years ago. We sent her off to the local affiliate here, and she went on to another major market. And from that market, she came to the network, and she had her child, and, she was working for a network. And one day she just said, she started thinking, and she just said, I'm not enjoying my child. I know the time I have to be to work. I just never know what time I'm going to get home. And she made a very conscientious a decision to leave the business. And like her, there are many people who are leaving the business because they're tired, and they're exhausted. And, some of the stories that we're telling are just tragic.
Yeah.
Be you on the border watching women cross with their children, and you see the desperation, be it the shootings.
Yeah.
For me, I think one of the most difficult times when I was reporting was 9/11. And this is something that a lot of people don't know, Emiliana, and that is that I was on the bridge. I was on the 14th Street Bridge coming in from Virginia to DC, because I knew what had already happened in New York. And I was coming to help my colleague who was being sent to New York when the plane hit the Pentagon.
Wow.
And I want to specify this here. I didn't see the plane after it hit the Pentagon. I saw the plane when it hit the Pentagon. In other words,
Wow.
I turned and I said, wow, I've never heard a plane flying so low in this area. And when I turned, I saw the plane, and I yelled at the person that I was on the phone with at that time, which was my news director at that time. And I said, it's going to hit the it's going to hit the building. It's going to hit the building. I remember yelling, it's going to hit the building. And the bridge shook. I remember seeing the big ball of fire. And instantly the smell of the smoke, the diesel, which stuck with me for weeks, that stench. And then, I had to live all of that. The people in their cars, everything was like in slow motion. The bridge shook,
Yeah.
and I had to go to work and immediately go on the air. So I didn't have time to process anything.
Wow.
There were interns here. The interns, weren't scared. They wanted to go out and help. And I remember that it was just continuous coverage up until 1 or 2 in the morning. And I remember that I didn't really process everything until they sent us home, so that we could just, freshen up, and we had to come back like 4 hours later. And I walked through the door, and my son at that time had just started high school. He was in the 9th grade. He was 14 years old. And he said, "Mommy, what is going on? ¿Qué está pasando? What is happening to us? What's happening in this country? Why are they attacking us? And do you have to be out there? And why are you coming home at this time?" And that's when it hit me, when I could see the fear in his eyes, because he didn't understand what was going on. And so after that, after that experience is where I learned, Emiliana, about what post-traumatic stress meant. Because I couldn't hear a plane go by without crouching. I would crouch when when I heard loud noises, I would jump. I couldn't hear the sirens. I couldn't stand the sound of sirens. And this went on for about 2 years. And I still live in Virginia. I still have to cross that bridge. And anytime that I see a plane, because they fly over into the Washington airport, I can't really look at. I still to this day cannot look up at the plane, because in my mind, I immediately am going to see a ball of fire. So I actually have to look down. I can't look at a plane. And so, that story marked me in many, many ways. Because then, there comes the other stories that you have to tell. There's survivors and all that kind of stuff. And I never really, I think, had time to process everything, because, I'm a citizen of this country. I love this country. And so not only as a journalist, but as a citizen of this country, you're hurt. And so that was a difficult time. And I wish I really would have had more time to think about it and to talk it through with someone, to kind of understand some of the things that I was living and I was feeling. And a lot of it, I just had to figure it out on my own and through and with time.
Wow, Lori. I had no idea that you went through that. And I am so sorry to hear that, because I can relate to you so much. And I think there's a lot of trauma that comes with witnessing things on video, but you saw this firsthand. So it's even more impactful. And then on top of that, I know for me as well, there's a lot of trauma that comes with the smells, and it sticks for quite a while.
It sticks.
Yeah.
It sticks. And, I remember something you just said when you mentioned this. I remember then having to leave the office and go to the area, the general area of the Pentagon. And a couple of days later, they actually let us in closer, and you could smell still skin.
Wow.
That smell that comes with burnt bodies and skin. You could smell that when we got closer. And so, yeah, you're right. I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah. There are smells that just bring back memories, and they're not always pleasant. Mm-hmm. And so I just think, we were talking about journalists leaving the business because they, the nature of some of these stories that we're telling is traumatic. Yeah. For example, the shootings. I can't imagine even, being in Uvalde, Texas.
Yeah.
How do you approach grandmothers, parents,
Yeah.
and teachers, and just people who, this small community where everybody knew everybody, and not tear up? How do you tell that story, and not, you know and hold, and control yourself, because of course, journalists are not supposed to cry. We're not supposed to show emotion. We're not supposed to show, favoritism towards anything. But you cannot be of flesh and blood and not feel something when you go and cover those kind of stories. And that's where we really need to take care of our journalists and say, okay, you're going in there, but that's just like sending them into a combat zone. When do you pull them out? And when do you give them at least, 24 hours to rest and to think things through before they go back into that arena? And that's kind of some of the things that I would like to see newsrooms do. Think about the journalist, when we send them out there, and it's devastating what they're looking at, and they're there day after day, and they're doing the morning show, and they're doing the afternoon show, and they're doing, the evening newscast, and then they have to do, if there's a West Coast update, or if there's an 11 o'clock show. We need to think about how much of that, besides the fact that they're tired, about the emotional part and the toll that that takes in telling that story.
Exactly. And I love that. That's a beautiful point. The toll that it takes on telling the stories. Because if you have a burnt out journalist, a journalist who's not emotionally well because they haven't had time to process a shooting like Uvalde or witnessing a plane crashing in the Pentagon, how much is it worth, like, squeezing? In Spanish, the language is the phrase is like exprimir el limón. Like, how much do you want to squeeze the life out of that person just to get a story across? It's
And
not.
not only that, they start to not look good. They start to make mistakes.
Oh
Okay.
yeah.
You make mistakes, and you can't tell the best story,
Yeah.
because, with those stories of tragedy also come those stories of just human nature, and the instinct of human nature to come together and unite, and fortify other people that are around. And so, you just gotta we gotta take a step back, I think, sometimes with the coverage. I'm not by no means saying, you don't get the coverage. I just think we have to find a better way to balance. Listen, a lot of, the women out there telling those stories are mothers.
Yeah.
A lot of the men out there are fathers. You know what I'm saying? And they're thinking of their own children. You can, because listen, there's not a journalist that can't tell you that they cover something like that and don't think of, what would I do if this was my child's school and my child were in this situation? There's got, the fear. You have to feel fear. And so that's all part of the emotional toll that you have to process.
Yeah. Wow. Speaking of the emotional toll, Lori, I wanted to ask you. I know Comcast does a really good job, and Comcast, being the owner of NBC Universal and Telemundo, does a really good job at trying to bring resources together to help journalists. They have a long-standing commitment since June 2020 to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they committed $100 million to champion a more connected, equitable, and just world, beginning with home. Right, home to them is
Exactly.
NBC, Universal, and Telemundo, and fostering this culture of inclusion and allowing their employees to feel supported, embraced, and heard. How do you feel, and especially if we compare it from 20 years ago to now? Do you feel the support? Do you feel being embraced? Do you feel like the company is heading in the right direction to create this change and be a leader and an example for other companies that maybe are not taking this care of their employees?
So, I can't speak to other companies, but you're right. They are, I would say, vanguard on the cutting edge of doing things differently and putting up to a certain degree, thinking of the employee, including, talking about taking personal time, redistributing those personal days, and more importantly, making accessible tools and information and people that we can actually pick up the phone and call to get help, you know, to just get that initial help that you may need if you're having a crisis. And I think they should be commended. And I think a lot of this also came and increased coming out of the pandemic. You know, they have understood that the pandemic put a lot of stress on a lot of families working from home, you know, and so even I feel that the resources and the tools that were given increased during the pandemic and after the pandemic. And I think this only helps and serves to having a more productive workforce, because when people feel that they are cared for, they will, you know, produce more. They're happier. They're more long term. You reduce turnover, and so all of those things are good. This is just, you know, like companies that understand maternity leave. And they also understand paternity leave now and are not hesitant into embracing all of those things. Yes, you know, those things weren't done in the past, but the world has changed. And there's just different needs because the world has different demands now. And so the more that we can do to embrace people and protect their mental health, I think any company that does that is most definitely on the right track. And if they can even increase what they do, that's even better.
Yeah, I completely agree 100%.
You know, we're not there. We're not where we need to be, definitely. You know, sometimes, and you know, vamos a hablar sin tapujos. I mean, I don't know how to translate that into English. I'll let you do that. But
So let's speak honestly. Yeah,
let's speak honestly.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times companies do have initiatives.
Yeah.
And they're very sincere when they put forward these initiatives. I think sometimes a better job needs to be done with managers and communicating the vision that the company has and the follow-up to make sure that those things are done. And so I think more work needs to be done there, that this is our vision and we want you to do anything and everything that you need to do so that this is executed. This is the same thing with, I'm referring to mental health right now and well-being. But this is the same as, you know, when years ago we started talking about diversity and inclusion. And, you know, you have a lot of companies talking about diversity and inclusion, but weren't really supervising the people who were responsible for the hiring. And people who were, you know, and the people who are in the diversity and inclusion unit can do wonders. And they can put forward resumes, they can make connections, they can create mentoring programs, they can make sure that they get, you know, interns from HBCUs or, you know, but if the people who have to do the hiring or are in charge of doing the hiring are not executing the company's vision, then it's hard for them to reach whatever goal there is. And so I would encourage companies to make sure that when you announce the initiative, that you have people in place that will supervise the execution and make sure that it's being executed at all levels and in all units of a company. And that's where I think sometimes it just falls through the cracks.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. That's a great point. And do you feel, because in one of the interviews that I did for Media Healers a while back, it was actually the first interview that I did. I was speaking to, actually her name was also Lori. I was speaking to Lori about diversity and inclusion as well. And she said, you know, sometimes companies just hire colorful people for the purpose of saying that they are diverse, but it doesn't necessarily means that they have a seat at the table or that they're being heard.
So let me tell you a funny story.
Okay. I love
one of my first jobs, I will just say it was the second station I went to. So I go to this interview, and Gentleman comes out and he looks at me, and as soon, it was just one of these things that as soon as he took a look at me, he looked down again at the resume and his eyes just lit up like he had just gotten the best gift ever.
Wow.
This man did not give me a reading test, didn't give me a writing test, didn't give me any test at all. Basically just asked, when can you start?
Yeah.
So I said, well, I got to give, notice at my job, 2 weeks notice. Okay, that's perfect. This is going to be your shift. So I start there. And I remember that the secretary of the general manager was an African-American young girl. And when she saw me walk in, she started to laugh. And she says, oh, now I know why so-and-so was so excited about you and also wanted me to rush your paperwork through because you just killed 3 stones. Okay. And I said to her, what do you mean by that? That never even crossed my mind. And she said, well, let's see. You're a woman, you're Black, and you're Hispanic.
Check.
And she said, oh, the FCC will love this.
Oh, wow.
Only 2 Black women in that station. And there was only 1 other Latino male, and that was it. We were it. And so they were thrilled to have me come on board. Didn't care. Didn't care if I could read, didn't care if I could write, didn't care anything. They just wanted me there.
And could you read back then? I'm kidding.
I hope so.
Did you go up to the job and be like, I can read?
I filled out the job application and the W-2.
Right.
So you know what? God. Those things
wow.
go on. Those things actually happen. They go on, and it's shameful.
Wow, it is.
It is shameful that people are hired, sometimes just to like you said, to check mark, and are not given a seat at the table, and are not taken into account in any way. Not looked to be promoted, mentored, or anything of the fact. They just know that you're there and that you're fulfilling a role, and that's the end of that. I think nowadays that is much harder to do, for companies to even attempt to do that. I wouldn't doubt that it is happening in smaller markets at some point. But I think we have come a long way. We've got things, more work to do, but we definitely have come a long way from when I started, for example, in television. I think I was just one of 2 Black Latinos who were on the air, and that was going on for many years. Today, you look at the local stations and you see a lot more people who look like me. And at the network level, I think there is still more to do, a lot more to do at the network level. And I'm talking about Hispanic media, but we're there. We are there, and we're being taken into account. And I'd like to see a lot of more of us in managerial positions, which we're not there. I don't think we're there yet. But I think eventually the work is being done, and there are good people. Ilia Calderon at Univision is a very good friend, and she is certainly doing a lot of work mentoring young people getting them there, and showing them. I think we are showing them, we're here. Look, we're here. You can do this, and that's a lot of what motivates young people when they see other people that look like them actually doing something that they may think about doing. That's a great motivator, and that's never going to change. I think that's the way it was in the past, it's in the present, and will always be in the future. That is the strongest weapon that you have, is that when you see people like you doing something, you can say, yo puedo, I can do it.
Yeah, it's inspiring. And you are one of the people in DC that inspired me every day to do my job. I mean, we worked in different companies, but every time I would run to you into you,
I was
and
always laughing.
yeah, was always laughing, always giving me great advice and mentorship. So you, I mean, Ilya's doing great work, but so are you all the time, constantly. I mean, you did it with me all the time. You did it with me right before this interview, made me tear up and everything. Um,
You're
and
doing great. I love this. I think, listen, this is important. This work that you're doing is innovative. I don't think anybody else is doing it. And it's important. It is important for people to see journalists um, as human beings. You know for a fact that our reputation has been tarnished.
Yeah.
We have been criticized. We've been called liars. And that takes a toll too. And that has driven a lot of good people, a lot of good storytellers, honest storytellers out of this business. And that's unfortunate, because I'm not calling for activism, activist journalists, like some call them. That's not what we're talking about. The journalists have a role in society. And it's important. It's an important role. But people do need to see that we are, flesh and blood. We have our own families. We have our own dreams. We have our dreams for our children. We support our parents. We're caretakers, sometimes of aunts and uncles, like anybody else. And so I so much appreciate the fact that you are doing this and saying, listen, this is a tough job. And this is not easy going. This is not about the glamour of being in front of a camera. There's much more to this job. And so thank you for coming to the forefront and being, open enough to not only talk about your struggles and that I'm sure you've shared with the audience that has seen you, but we've got a lot of young ladies out there who are alone with a camera, who are being, harassed, in some cases being touched. There's a young lady in Philadelphia that I felt for her, who got punched in the face, and she was just standing in front of the camera doing a job. She wasn't even trying to interview anybody. She was just standing there waiting to do her live shot. The last few years when I was standing on the street corner right here at 400 North Capitol, there were days when I felt uneasy, Emiliana, standing there to do a stand-up. I felt uneasy. And, there are people, that would be either walking by, or they go by in the cars, and, they'd be yelling profanities and insults and stuff, and this is not an easy job. And it's not only just the ladies, it's the men. They're out there, in neighborhoods that are not the best neighborhoods, covering a crime story. They're out there at 11 o'clock at night, and they're doing it all by themselves. So they got to do the camera, they got to do the lights, they got to watch where they park. It's not an easy job by no means, okay? But it is a job that is necessary in our society to be done, because there are all kinds of stories that need to be told. That includes the good ones, along with the bad ones, along as the investigations that reveal things that are being done that are wrong, okay, and that are hurting people. We have tons of stories that need to be told. Somebody has to tell them, and we have to support the people that tell them.
Amen. Amen. And with that said, I want to take the time, Lori, to honor you and recognize you as well for the path you've opened up for so many of us. I know you're very humble, and I know you hate people bragging about you, but yes, I think credit is due where it deserves to be due. And you said this to me before we started the interview, so I want to honor that in you as well, and give you credit for all the doors you've opened for so many of us, and for doing so much behind cameras. Too, like taking the time to mentor me so many times when I was at the White House, and guiding me and just giving me advice, and especially advice on how to navigate the industry, on how to navigate difficult bosses that were maybe slowing down or impeding my growth within the news industry. When you saw my eagerness and my talent and my passion and my drive and my curiosity, and always motivating me to do better, to seek better, and to find my path and my way. And you do that so often for so many of us behind the scenes, and nobody knows about it, because these are the stories that we don't tell about mentors who are in the news industry who have done so much to open doors for Hispanics like myself and people of color and just women in general. And to have you be in this leadership position, and still with so much grace and with so much faith, which I think we have that in common too, right? The faith that we share. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart, because you're one of the kindest human beings that I know.
Well, thank you so much, Emiliana. I just want to leave with this. You know, I was blessed by the people that I had early on in my career, which was the George Addisons, the Robert Halls of the world, and Professor Kearns. And for me, this may sound cliche to some people, but the concept of pay it forward is very important. And so that is one of the biggest rewards. Yes, I have no regrets with my career. I have done everything that I possibly could have done, wanted to do. I was blessed with good bosses, bad bosses, but given many opportunities that I took. And so for me, it is very important that when I can, I want to pay it forward. I want to pay forward the blessing that I had for the years of this career, that I think it's one of the best that are in the world. I think you feel the same. I think reporters are great. Okay, awesome people. And so I thank you for your words, but I just want to encourage everyone that if you are successful, and even if you are not as successful as you think you could have been, or not, even if you don't even feel successful, pay it forward. There's so many ways that you can help a young person. People are starting out in their careers. You would be surprised how you can crush someone with words, even with actions. And so if you can pay it forward, you are going to feel this satisfaction that goes beyond any awards that you can get. Don't do it expecting anything in return. And there's an alarm going off. I don't know why. Don't do it expecting.
You have to go into their editorial meeting soon.
They
I'll
can
let
wait.
you go.
I'm talking to Emiliana. I think it's more satisfying than any award that you can get, knowing that you lifted somebody up, because it's so easy to tear down, but it's much harder to lift somebody up and keep them lifted up. Yes, you have to be patient. Don't expect anything in return, because if you do it expecting something in return, you're going to be disappointed. Just know that you did it with good faith, okay? And that somewhere down the line, that person will benefit from you extending a hand to them. And I always tell the interns, remember who you saw on your way up, because you're going to see them on their way down. And so, that's the attitude that I have had with everything that I have done in my life, and especially with this career. So thank you so much for your kind words. I think they're undeserving. I don't think I deserve them. I don't think I have done anything that nobody else would do. But that's just me, and I don't think I can be any other way. I can't imagine it being any other way.
Because you have a good heart. I love you, Lori. Thank you.
I love you too, Emiliana. This has been great. This has been awesome.
Yeah, I agree.
Journalists, this one's for you, to help you heal, to help you understand your worth, and to help you know you're not alone. So share the love and subscribe to Spotify and YouTube, and follow us on Instagram. The Awakened Journalist is proud to present Media Healers by Emiliana Molina Fajardo.